Hi, folks. This is the T Rant. Here to ramble on a little bit again. I'm going to talk about choice. This is a philosophical and theological topic that most everybody has some opinion on. And so, just going to roll with it from the best of my understanding. And I guess we'll find out what you think. So, most people definitely reserve to themselves, for lack of a better term, the ability and the authority to choose however they see fit. The question is it a freedom? Is it a superpower? Is it whatever? Is it right, wrong, or indifferent? Well, that's something you have to decide, or let me rephrase that, something you have to choose for yourself. This is what I've come to believe. I've sat through many a sermon of preachers that hail it as a superpower, others that seem to have other opinions about it. I know I got into the debate at one point in my life with my mother, where I had begun to question the idea of choice as an inalienable right, for lack of a better term. She ultimately shoved a cassette tape at me that she had gotten from having been recorded in her church, and it was basically hailing choice as superpower. And you can I'll leave that up to you all to interpret, simply for time. If nothing else, I'll touch on it, but mainly I want to communicate the conclusions that I had come to and have now come to what I believe is an even greater understanding of. I'll leave it up to you all to interpret, make your own choices. So, hailing it as a superpower, I do believe that God, in the beginning, created choice, obviously. But I also believe that God created science and a sense of humor as well. I mean, otherwise, where did it come from? But having said that, there is a philosophy that always surrounds any discussion of a quote-unquote quote superhero or super person or what have you, that says that with great power comes great responsibility. And I think that that's at the core of the discussion, that no matter what you want to call it, choice always comes with responsibility, and therefore warrants great understanding. In the beginning, in the Bible, pretty much any Bible that you're going to pick up and read, it talks about the two trees in the garden. And the two trees in the garden, without a doubt, represented choice. And we know that in the Bible, it talks about Adam being given artistic license to do things like name the animals. So, to me, that sounds like choice was truly created. It was presented to man as one of his abilities, powers, and there were some guidelines that were presented for the purpose of him exercising that. It doesn't take a whole lot of debate to truly realize that, because one of the choices pertaining to the trees, the two trees, the tree of life and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, at least one of those two came with a curse. Now, in Christian circles, they will discuss the law. They obviously take a certain amount of license in the process of saying what that means and what that means to you, what the purpose of the law is and such. And they also say that it pretty much started with Moses. And to a great extent, that's the Jewish understanding, as I understand it. But to me, and analyzing all those philosophies, theologies, whatever you want to call them, what it comes down to is this. Although we were presented and created with the ability to choose as a power, superpower or not trying to debate its caliber in that way, but just the existence of it and the brevity of it. So we were not only given the ability to choose, but we were given guidelines right up front, all the way from the beginning, what we should choose and what we should not choose. So with that power came responsibility and consequences. Having said that, having established that concept, I think it behooves people to evaluate that for themselves, that the whole concept of choice does come with consequences and responsibilities. So I'm not going to rip into everything about the garden scenario. I've touched on it in other videos. Probably will touch on it again before it's all said and done. But the takeaway that I'm hoping that people will hear is that choice was not a blank check. It existed. It was, in fact, a gift. But it comes with responsibility. It certainly impacts your relationship with God, because those in the garden, according to the story, transgressed those laws, if you will, that existed long before Moses, and consequently were invited to leave the garden and not come back anytime soon. There you have it. That's the basic concept. Now, what does it mean to me? Me personally. Perhaps you as well. If not now, maybe after you hear what I have to say, it might mean something different. You'll have to choose. The best way to articulate this, to me, is kind of near and dear to my heart, not just because of all of the struggle in dissecting and analyzing the subject throughout my own life, but at the end of the day, I had an epiphany, and I'm going to share it with you, that has to do with a beloved movie that I think articulates the concept very, very well. The movie was derived from a book. I think the name of the movie was simply Willy Wonka. The book was Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. And I'm not talking about that Johnny Depp thing. That was kind of just weird. I was a little disappointed that they took a very familiar and beloved story and spun it in a rather modern and peculiar way. Not to take away from the artistry of that individual, because that was their choice. I just like the original story better. The original movie with Gene Wilder was a superior rendering. In the story, Willy Wonka owns a chocolate factory, but he decides it might be getting time for him to retire. But he was so passionate about his created establishment of the Willy Wonka chocolate factory that he wanted to find a suitable heir type recipient to the operation that would maintain operations according to his original vision. So he puts out these golden tickets in the chocolate bars, in the treats, and people that received them were going to receive a tour of the chocolate factory, which had been basically, a little bit of humor for those of you to get it, hermetically sealed. Hermetics comes from the philosophies of Hermes Trismegistus, someone who is recognized in ancient Greek culture. Hermes the thrice great, Trismegistus. The concept of hermetic sealing is like what you get in a pack of crackers, where they actually seal it up and you have to break the seal to get in. It's also the origin of the word hermit, where someone basically lives very reclusively, most likely removed from nearby civilization, and does not tend to interact with the world around them outside of nature. So having said that, the operations were very controlled and isolated from the rest of the world. It was mysterious to people. And so many of these people were very curious to understand the inside operations of the factory that they liked so well because of the quality of candy. People go on missions to ferret out these golden tickets in order to get a place in the tour. Shows many of the processes that they go through, particularly the wealthy, trying to get them for their kids. And a kid named Charlie, who was not wealthy, luckily or otherwise, winds up with one of these tickets and gets to go on the tour. He is invited to bring one guest. He chose his grandfather to go with him, the one he seemed to get along with the best. And they went on the tour. Well, throughout the tour, through a process of shenanigans, everybody having their own purpose, most of them selfish, everyone on the tour got into trouble. And only one of them actually completed the tour because they wound up in some sort of situation where they were needing to be restored in some way in order to return to their lives. Things like turning into a blueberry, or turning into some sort of cyber entity from having been transported through television waves and so on. Falling into the furnace because they were trying to steal a golden goose, and so on and so forth. If you'd like more information, read the book or watch the movie. It's the old one, Gene Wilder. And this included Charlie, but Charlie actually wound up in a situation where he was able to walk out of the tour, unlike most of the other people, or all of the other people. And that included walking through Willy Wonka's office, and at that which point he approached Willy Wonka, I believe it was at the urging of his grandfather particularly, to receive his lifetime supply of chocolate that was promised to everybody on the tour. At that point, he was very abruptly chastised by Willy Wonka, saying that you signed a contract at the beginning of the tour, and there were a list of things that you should not do, cannot do, or the contract related to the golden ticket and advertised pertaining to the golden ticket was null and void. And therefore, you will not be receiving the lifetime supply of chocolate in the proverbial "good day, sir" manner. So along the tour, every person on the tour was given a piece of candy that was still in development that was known as the Everlasting Gobstopper, which was essentially a piece of hard candy that you could suck on indefinitely, forever, and it would never go away. You'd always get to enjoy the flavor. You could take it out, save it for later, and enjoy it basically forever. But they were sworn to secrecy about it, and they were told to never reveal it to anyone else. But what you find out through the movie is that there is a guy named Slugworth who is the biggest competitor of Willy Wonka and Willy Wonka chocolates that is interested in the Everlasting Gobstopper and offered a reward to anybody who would bring him one. And they were all given one. And so towards the end of the movie, as Willy Wonka is chastising Charlie for breach of contract and inviting him to leave, Charlie's grandfather says, well, if Slugworth wants to have an everlasting gobstopper, he's going to get one. And is influencing Charlie to violate the terms that were given to him again. Charlie begins to go. And what you have to analyze at this point is that at that moment in time, when Charlie left with the Everlasting Gobstopper, he had a choice. And the choice was between telling someone about it, actually giving one to someone who has presented himself as someone that will compensate him for the deed of bringing him one, or he could go about his business, honor the request of Willy Wonka, enjoy it the rest of his life, but never tell anybody. Of course, the wild card there was Grandpa, because it wasn't just up solely to Charlie, because, you know, Grandpa could rat it out too, and he was influencing Charlie out of spite to do so. At that point, Charlie made a choice. Charlie returned to Willy Wonka and gave him back the Everlasting Gobstopper. At that point, Charlie could leave and go about his life. And whether he told somebody or not, the damage is mitigated simply by the fact that no one would have one and could not give one to Slugworth, the competition, or he could just keep the part of where he doesn't tell anybody. And so at the end of the day, Willy Wonka's interests would be protected. Of course, the story continues at this juncture. Charlie is then introduced to the guy who had presented himself as Slugworth. It turns out he actually worked for Willy Wonka and was in place for the purpose of damage control of anybody who did try to undermine Willy Wonka's interests by giving Slugworth an everlasting gobstopper. There's so much in here. It's amazing. It's awesome. First of all, there's the concept that the devil, aka Slugworth, worked for Willy Wonka, aka God. All this in a metaphoric context, but I think that that's the purpose here that was written. And yeah, so by the way, the devil does work for God. I cannot begin to completely explain all the negative and evil forces out there. I personally believe that there are other forces out there that are evil, that will come to get you, like the people in the Matrix movies, where suddenly they lock on you if you don't seem right to them, target you in some way, and even turn to agents to come to get you. I believe that those exist. But the person who is presented primarily in your life and throughout the scriptures as the devil in your life, most of those characters are one of two people. One, Lucifer, who is an angel. He is an angel of light. It's very clear in your Bible. And if you read the book of Job, he works for God, shows up for staff meetings. One of the other evil characters in your life that you have to contend to for the purpose of overcoming life is yourself. And that kind of goes back to the old Asian proverb, I believe it is, about the two dogs or two wolves, it depends on who's telling the story, that live inside of your heart. Whichever one you feed the most wins. Freudian psychology says that there are three voices in everybody's head. There is the ego, the superego, and the id. I've never been able to prove it, but I actually am inclined to believe that that's where the term idiot comes from. Someone that is getting direction from the id, who is the little devil that pops up on your shoulder in the cartoons. The angel that pops up on the other shoulder is either an angelic figure or the part of you that is your conscience, so to speak, and so on. Freud says all the voices belong to you, but that they're aspects of you. And then, of course, then there's the you, the guy whose shoulders that everybody's standing on, trying to influence him, that he has to discern who he's going to listen to and who he's not going to listen to. Or should I say, choose. The video is not over. Sorry to interrupt. It's just time to do that thing that YouTubers do. So if the T-Rant's giving you enough to think about, ponder on, or even cuss about, don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you're going to ring that bell, make sure your notifications are turned on your account or you won't even hear them. Thanks. And we're back. So, at this point in the story now, Willy Wonka begins to play an open hand. He shows him that even if he'd gone to Slugworth, so to speak, that he was actually doing business with Willy Wonka, and Willy Wonka had put things in place to protect his own interests. But then he reveals to Charlie that he had, unbeknownst to himself, passed a test. Now, the test is very interesting in that it has a couple dynamics. One that I've discussed before, that Willy Wonka could have gone forward, kept his secret, kept his everlasting gobstopper, and never transgressed against Willy Wonka again. But Charlie took an even higher path. He returned the everlasting gobstopper to Willy Wonka, removing his ability to truly undermine Willy Wonka's interests again. And that is what the point in time that Willy Wonka tells him, Charlie, you've won. The whole purpose of this is to choose someone to take over the entire operations here. And it had to be somebody young, because they would be at least malleable to Willy Wonka, so that he could teach them how he wanted things to be done. And two, they had to have an adequately pure heart that they would be willing to receive Willy Wonka's instructions and care about Willy Wonka's interests and purposes. At that point, Willy Wonka...
Strike that. Reverse it.
Or Charlie, finds out that he will be allowed to bring his family to live with him in the factory, and would ultimately be given complete duties as what people would these days call the CEO. So what is the everlasting gobstopper? Well, what I believe is that the everlasting gobstopper, in and of its own, represents choice. Choice is the everlasting gobstopper of life. And I've kind of come up with my own joke in life, that if anybody ever asks me the question, what is the meaning of life? Or what do you believe the meaning of life is? I just jokingly tell them, it's Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. And herein we find, within Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, that choice is given to you in order to demonstrate your character. Anyway, moving forward in this thought process, that by relinquishing choice, having owned choice, but returning choice back to the Creator, you then receive the prize. It's kind of like the one wish with a genie that is the most correct wish, that technically at the end of the day puts you in the place that you want to be. I watched a movie recently where this lady had studied a lot of literature, and she came in contact with a genie, and she told him, look, I don't want to know about it. I don't want anything to do with it. Because every story about a genie and wishes always ends bad. So with my understanding of the topic, I kind of want to stay away from it. Well, I think there's a choice analogy in the genie in the bottle illustration as well. Sure, you all know it, at least most of you. So I'm not going to really try to render up another in-depth analogy. I'm going to continue with the one I'm discussing regarding Willy Wonka, the Chocolate Factory, Charlie, and the everlasting gobstopper, which is choice, the meaning of life. I've recently had to reanalyze that a little bit, in the sense that, hey, there's more to life than just choice. But choice is a very, very, very important aspect, and has great bearing on obtaining the Chocolate Factory, the lifetime supply of chocolate. So anyway, I love the way that it alludes to the fact that Slugworth worked for Willy Wonka. That's deep. Get that. I love the fact that there were two truths, but there was a higher truth, in the sense that by relinquishing his ability to fail Willy Wonka again, then and only then was Charlie given the true prize. So I would venture to put it this way, and I've done it before in many conversations, that yes, we were kind of given choice, but the ability to make all manner of choices at our own liberty, we kind of hijacked. We were given choice with guidelines and responsibilities, and thinking that you can wield this superpower with impunity is just not correct. There are consequences for poor choices, and they are massive. There are blessings for good choices, and they are massive too. So, there you have it. Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, the meaning of life. Take that out and play with it. Let me know what you think. Let other people know what you think. I've tried to communicate with you what I think. And with that, I'm going to bid you good day, sir. Not to get into discussion of pronouns, just quoting the movie and many other movies, for that matter, and many other television shows and so on. That phrase has become very cliche. But have a nice day. This is T-Rant out.